Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the City of Gainesville General Policy Committee for Thursday, April 9th. Glad to have you all with us. We've got some real interesting things to talk about today. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we have the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Okay. All right. Is there a second? Second. All right. I see no other lights. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously with Commissioner Duncan Walker absent. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we have the approval of the minutes from the March 12th, 2026 General Policy Committee meeting, and the recommendation is the General Policy Committee approve the minutes from the March 12th meeting.
I move adoption of approval minutes from March 12th, 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the minutes as printed and distributed. I see no lights. Is there any public comment on that?
There is no public comment.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously with Commissioner Duncan Walker absent. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we're on to our discussion items for the afternoon. 2026-231 Art and Public Places Trust Ordinance Review with recommendation the General Policy Committee hear a presentation on the Arts and Public Places Trust, authorize staff to work with the Arts and Public Places Trust to update the ordinance in the Art and Public Places Trust Master Plan, and authorize staff to update the collections management policy.
Very good. Welcome to Ladendorf.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Leslie Ladendorf, Assistant Director for Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. Thank you for allowing us to provide this presentation on the Art and Public Places program, managed by Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs, in particular Cultural Affairs, part of that. Today with me is our Director, Roxy Gonzalez. Carol Velasquez Richardson, our Cultural Affairs Manager, and Oakleana Caraballo, of our Chair of APPT, so the Art and Public Places Trust. I'm going to walk us through the Art and Public Places Ordinance, goals, trust, and history, present how that aligns with the overall city art program, and we will have an opportunity to discuss this information, hear about challenges and recommendations from staff. So then I will get right into it. So our Art in Public Places is ordained by an ordinance. It is to enhance the quality of the visual environment in the Gainesville community, both naturally and built. This is so that we can have a great quality of life for our citizens within our community, our neighbors, if you will. Oh, see, you went too fast. The goals for Art in Public Places in that chapter are to increase public access to art and the aesthetically designed environment, and to promote understanding and awareness of the visual arts in the public environment. This is not only just sculpture, but it can also include infrastructure when we're creating or building or renovating buildings. To contribute to the civic pride and economic development of our community, to enhance the climate for artistic creativity in our community, to enrich the public environment for both residents and visitors to the area through incorporation of visual arts, and to enable our community to attain recognition as a cultural center. It tells the story of who we are as a city and as a community. So as you come in, you will learn through art what it means to be a neighbor, what it means to be a visitor, what it means to be part of the fabric of the community that we all live in. To manage the Art and Public Places program, Cultural Affairs takes that lead role as the staff side of it. But we also have a very important part of that, which is our Art and Public Places Trust. That is also written into the ordinance that we currently have. The Trust Board shall uphold the goals that we've already read over in the ordinance, and in accordance to their bylaws. So they also have bylaws. They're an advisory board as much as a governing board for us for art. Their membership is very important. It consists of 5 regular members and then 3 temporary members for each project. So if you think about any project that we're doing with Wild Spaces, where we're like Clarence R. Kelly, we're going to rebuild Clarence R. Kelly. It's going to generate some funds for us to do public art. Not only would our trust be on the panel, but also maybe the architect of that building or a stakeholder from that community. We would put about 3 extra members on the board, on that panel for that particular project. And their duties really are, kind of operate independently with the help of Cultural Affairs, and they review and make decisions of public art projects and acquisitions. And I'll get a little bit more into that, what that means when I talk about art as a whole in the city. Art in public places is also in our comprehensive plan. So it's in our current comprehensive plan, and it is also in our draft Imagine GNV plan. What was really important in the change from the current to the new is really that we wanted to put in transparency and allow the community to understand how art is chosen, what the process is, and who's available, and to reduce barriers so that more artists could participate within the Art in Public Places program. We also wanted to make sure that through this comprehensive plan that we are addressing underserved audiences, historically excluded neighborhoods, historically excluded communities in that process as well. So we really kind of baked that into the new comprehensive plan too. So how did we get to the Art in Public Places? So really, let's talk about going back to the 70s and thinking about 34th Street wall when people started doing art expression on that wall. And it became allowed. Graffiti was allowed because it was an artistic expression from our community. Out of those kind of early years, there was a creation of the Florida Arts Celebration nonprofit to support public art, and then a selection of art in public places as a special and ongoing project for Gainesville. So we started out as a project. In about '86 was the creation of the Arts in Public Places Committee to oversee that project, and that was chaired by Paula Kreiser. If you've heard of Kreiser Hall at UF, you would understand that is the spouse of. By the late 80s, we had to start addressing some very serious issues with that program, including political interference in artistic decisions, site-specific art versus plop art. If you don't know the difference of that, site-specific is you have a fire station that's being built and someone is commissioned to make art for that site that is fire-related. It might tell a story. It might honor. There's some kind of component that is site-specific to that art. And then plop art. We might purchase a piece of art and put it in a place where it might not be site-specific, but it does enhance the community and the aesthetics of our city. And then limited public understanding of contemporary art. And a lot of people would look at contemporary art and be like, oh, I don't understand it. I don't get it. It's not for me. But getting people to understand what that means and how they can tell stories as well. And then managing expectations and transparency. In 1989, through all that work, we adopted the ordinance, formally establishing the Art in Public Places and embedded that 1% for art policy. Lastly, in 2009, we adopted an Art in Public Places master plan. So that is our last master plan. That is the one we have. That's the one we've been operating under. If you have any questions on the history? Okay. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the process. How do we get art to these projects in the city? So this is a generalized plan. It can vary. Levers can be pulled and pushed in a way that makes sense for each project and the amount of money we're trying to spend per project. But this is the general way that we would choose art for Art in Public Places Trust. First, our team and staff, and Carol and her team, would do a project identification. So any new construction or major renovation in the building triggers that 1% for city construction only. Once that project has been identified, they convene a panel with the Art in Public Places Trust and those 3 temporary members. They then will create the scope of work and advertise a call to artists. And this is for an RFQ. So we talk about step 1 is an RFQ. We're just looking at qualifications of artists that could potentially do art under this scope. And it's tended to be a little bit generalized scope at first, and then we hone it down a little bit more later. In step 2, we do a concept review where we choose from that step 1, 3 to 4 artists that will come back to us and present actual concepts. When they do that, we refine that scope even more based on any kind of community feedback, based on your feedback, based on the Art in Public Places Trust feedback, and we can refine that scope, and then we pick those 3 artists, and then we pay them a small stipend to be able to create that concept, because that's time. That's time out of their day to go back and generate the ideas and generate what they want to do as far as meeting that scope and creating that piece of art. Then step 3 is the scoring and selection. It goes back to the panel and the APPT, and they will score the concepts using a predetermined rubric so that they can, again, be very transparent and people know what they're being judged upon. And they will choose the final piece. After that, we go to procurement, and then we go on to the installation. So this installation then becomes part of the city's art collection. And so what does that mean? Art as a city asset. We have a city art collection, and it's more than just what has been done through APPT, but also all kinds of different mechanisms. It is city-owned visual art collections, and that includes the indoor-outdoor sculptures that we might have, paintings, prints, etc., all different kinds of art that we own. That art collection is in perpetuity. We keep it for as long as we can. There's very specific rules on how you dispose of art if you don't need it anymore, but it doesn't go to surplus. It comes back to art, to the cultural affairs area to have discussions with APPT on how to dispose of any kind of art if we need to. That art can be commissioned. We can commission that art to be created specifically for us. We can purchase that art, which we have done several years recently. We have purchased many pieces of art, and we've also had art donated to us, so we can also get art donated as a gift. I will also say that we do have temporary art, which is art that's on loan to us, that we're then be responsible for. And so that is also a little separate caveat, but it's not permanently ours. We also have an art archive system. It's a new database that we got last year for cataloging the current collections. Cataloging a collection includes photos of the art. It includes deeds of gifts. It could include newspaper articles about that piece of art. It can include condition reports, because we do try to check on each piece and do a condition report on it to know what the status is of each piece. So all that goes into this database so that we can have a perpetual record of what's going on with that art that we own in the city. Recently, we had Carol and her team, John Gaunt. They actually went out and did an inventory. They went into people's offices. They might have gone into city manager's office and said, "Do you have art?" So they looked around a lot in all of the buildings that we own to try to determine what art hadn't been cataloged yet. And so that we're on a process to make sure that everything that we own is cataloged. The city responsibility. So with the collections management, we're responsible for cataloging all that art, inventorying it, doing condition report and inspections, and then maintenance and cleaning and repair of that art, which is really important. Other department charters, we always ask to be good custodians of art in their locations and notify PRCA of need to remove of any art or damage to any art. So it would go back to Carol and her team to be able to go out there, inspect it, look at it. Is it really part of our collection? Is it not? Is it just decor that was bought at Ross? And so finding out if it's really part of our collection, and then if we have to move it, handle that. Or if we have to repair it and damage, or talk to the artist about what to do. Artists always hold some rights to the art, even if we own it or commissioned it. So we always have to be very careful that we talk to artists before we remove, especially site-specific art that was designed for that space. We recently moved the fire station headquarters art to the Catalyst building. Unfortunately, that artist had passed away, so we weren't able to talk to them, but we remain steadfast in keeping that art specific to what it was intended for, is to be at our headquarters. So it went from one headquarters to the next. Collection management policy. This was developed in 2021. Before that, we didn't have a collection management policy, and it has our policy and our practices on how we maintain and care for the collection, how we add to the collection, how we remove from the collection, and how we manage art that's on loan to us. Pre-budget cuts, it included some very aspirational desires. The collection was really about looking how we could someday in the future build a Gainesville City Museum. With our current status right now, that's not really something we are trying to actively do. It could be something on the horizon. It could be something that the art master plan comes up with. We just have to see how that goes. But it is in need of being revised. The other thing that it didn't include, which I feel like is such a something of omission that I should have caught, but back in the day, but that was the including the large-scale monumental art that we do, all these sculptures that are out and about. The collection policy really focused on what kind of art would we collect moving forward for this idea of a museum. And so we need to go back and kind of refine that and then incorporate Art in Public Places Trust into it. And then lastly, the Art in Public Places Master Plan. It was created in 2009. It had an aspirational ideal set forth for the city realm. It is definitely outdated. We definitely need to review it. It was created by the board at that time, and we are recommending that it comes back to the city and the APPT as a unit to review it and determine how to move forward on creating a new plan. Because it is a master plan, so there's a lot of public engagement that you want to have included. There's a lot of input and analysis and data that we want to have included in it when we move forward. So if there's any questions about art as a city asset, if you see art in our building, there's somebody who manages that and takes care of it and makes sure that it's in its home and where it needs to be.
I did just look up the population change between
Yes.
now and when we adopted the last master plan. We've grown by 25%,
Yeah.
so it's
A
probably
lot.
time. Yeah.
And we've had conversations over time. Like that's one of those things. Like it's out there. We need to address it. We need to get to it. It's on our radar. So it has been something we've had discussions with APPT and internally. Currently, these are our art in public places projects and visual art projects that the trust is helping us with. There's a lot. I think 5 of them. Yep, 5 of them are through street stations and strong foundations. Then we have another 4 or 5 that are wild spaces, public places. GCRA has a couple of projects that are in the hopper for us as well. And then we also have some general fund money that we were working on, something for Bo Diddley to change out and make a more creative signage and make it more visible when you're at the plaza. So all of that goes into the projects, and you can see the varying amounts. If you're talking about 1% for that particular project, it's going to generate all different kinds of amounts. And so we might have very small projects, we might have very large projects, but all of that is managed, by the way, by Ms. Carol Velasquez Richardson. So she is actually managing all these projects and doing it beautifully and really enjoys it. So it's always good when they enjoy what they're doing. Next, we have some challenges. We are very grateful in having our 1%. We are loving this. We have a ton of projects that are going to be coming out. We're going to be doing some beautiful art around the city, but there are some challenges. So funding for public art in the city is project-based. So it comes in through the trust, and that's what we have. We've tried to be a little bit creative at times. We brought in an art loan of 22 sculptures that we put in 20 parks during the Gainesville 150 event. Where we had those on loan. We had to pay for those, but they were on loan, and we used the Gainesville 150 funding to have various events celebrating the city at those parks with those sculptures. So we interacted with them and had programming. But it's non-recurring. So it's one time we get that money and we spend it. There's a lack of ongoing and recurring maintenance funding, where some of our parks operations might have some funding that's recurring for maintenance. Art does not. We don't have any funding for that. And we don't have a dedicated visual arts coordinator. Right now, like I said, our cultural affairs manager is managing all of those projects, plus the galleries, plus Aquin Jones, plus her team, plus I could keep going on. But she loves that. It's not something we would want to take away, but we would want to see how we could assist her in some kind of way, what that could look like. Today you'll have some discussion items, I believe, so I'm just going to kind of run through them really quick. You can stop me after this slide before I go on to our recommendations, or you can, however you want to do this, we can do it one by one. I can run through them real quick. So I'll just start and you guys, all right. The public art impact fee for citywide private and public development. So this would be outside of what the city does. We've discussed this, we've looked into it. We've actually started looking into that several years ago with the board, with the trust. We're concerned, and we're not sure this is a recommendation we want to move forward with right now because of current legislation that would impact fees. So that one's a tough one for us. A development of incentive for providing public art. We could definitely research that, look into that, see how that would work, and discuss with Art and Public Places Trust and Sustainable Development. I was remiss in not adding them, but they know this. This is not stuff we know. So we would definitely go to them to see how incentives would work, if they could work, and what that could potentially look like. Increasing above 1% and/or a portion going towards maintenance. Currently, in the ordinance, 20% can go to administration. 80% goes to the actual art commission. Administration, while loose, is not loose enough. It really is to support travel for artists, infrastructure upgrades if needed for installation. There's really specific things in there like training or educational opportunities, very specific for administration, but doesn't say maintenance anywhere. And so maintenance was not included in the original ordinance. So that is something that, if you guys want to discuss, we would like to talk about. Also, increasing above 1% means all of the projects. We love art, we want it, I'm for it. But it does mean that some of your wild spaces or your street stations projects could see an increase in their funding.
Well, let me pause you there. I have a question for Commissioner Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So changing definition, that's in the ordinance, correct? The definition of administration?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
it's in the ordinance. So changing that would potentially open it up. Do you have a pretty good record of what is currently being spent on administration versus the commission? Like, typically, and would that number be kind of project-based or kind of everything for the year, or?
It's project-based.
Okay.
So typically, we have projects that are $9,000. I'm probably not going to siphon off 20% to go into administration on a $9,000 project, because then I have a lot less money to spend on the actual art. So depending on the amount, the 100,000 projects that we have right now, yes, 80% will go into administration, and 100. So we'll have 80,000 for art, 20,000 for administration. So yes, we will look at each project individually to determine if we're going to spend some administration money. The administration money we've spent in the past has typically been directed to supporting the artist in some kind of way.
But that would still be, in essence, project-based, because I'm getting at is that
Yeah.
ideally you have a pool, because you
Yeah.
need it for something that you installed 20 years ago, maintenance, right?
Right.
And so ideally it'd be more like a pot that gets set aside out of every individual project, perhaps out of administration, but then it's not project-based, it is available. You're gonna have to tell us that, or APPT is gonna have to tell us that, or otherwise we'll just be like, oh, sure, you can do it, and then it's still like stuck project-based.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean,
Yep.
just because I think that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of things where you do a set aside, and most of us in our personal finance,
Yeah.
sometimes, if we're really forward thinking, we set aside kind of maintenance out of something, out of a project personally, and then it builds up, and then you have to spend it occasionally. So
Yes.
something like that makes a lot of sense to me, but I look forward to seeing what APPT says.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, please.
And then expand project type that requires trust fund contributions. Currently, we said it's new building construction and major renovation to buildings. And there's a $100,000 threshold for that. So it has to be a $100,000 project and above right now. So those things could be discussed of how far do we cast that net to say these projects could also qualify in addition to building and renovation. So those, and it's typically renovation of buildings. It's really has been very building specific. So our recommendations really are very, very basic. We want to review and update the ordinance. We definitely want to go back to the Art and Public Places Trust. We want to look at what other people are doing. We want to refine any kind of research that's already existing and really hone in on that. I would say in that ordinance, we would also look at levers. There are three things that go together: the percentage, the threshold, and the maximum. These three things together can be slid up and down, but they all affect each other. They're not independent of each other. So we would want to make sure whatever levers we're moving up and down, that when we move them, it makes sense and it's sustainable. And then the other part of that would be casting that net wider. What kind of projects, what kind of criteria would they need, that kind of thing. We would want to look at that for the ordinance. And then, of course, adding in the maintenance part. Review and update the Art and Public Places Master Plan. You can see 2009 is way overdue. We're ready to do it. And then review and update the PRCA Cultural Affairs Collection Management Policy.
Very good.
And
All
so
right.
that's what I've got for you today. If you have any
Okay.
questions or you guys want to discuss
There's
discussion
plenty to
items, I'll
chew
go
on
back.
there. Thank you.
There you go.
Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you for staff for all your hard work on this. I'm really excited we're talking about it. I think public art's you just get an incredible ROI for our city by investing in public art. These are not. We have approved some guaranteed maximum price contracts recently. We're looking at. A 1% of those will get you, something that really beautifies a space. It increases tourism. It increases foot traffic within areas. There's so much research out there that talks about the importance of public art beyond just the fact that cities should be attractive places to be. But there's really hard numbers that show the importance that public art has on making a community more lively, more thriving. But we're a community that's really proud of our arts and very proud of being a creative community. So I'm glad you guys brought this forward. I think what staff brought forward is right on with where we need to be. I've tried to spend a good amount of time looking at where other cities are. I have Sarasota. I got this great chart from that looks at other communities and how and I think what Leslie said is right. There's just these kind of levers. How wide of a net do you cast? What is the threshold for, what is the cap? So how much money of your capital improvement dollars are you actually putting into this? And is it possible to use maintenance dollars for it? I think that's the right, and I think that's sort of where we are. And so I agree that our cap, I think, was put in, in 2000? Is that what
I think it goes back from 89.
89.
Yeah.
So we're putting on about a cap of 100,000 into various arts projects. 100,000 goes significantly less now, of course, than it does in 1989. And so the quality of the art's going down, and then it's also, not the quality, just the size of the art, the visual spectrum of the art. We still have some incredible art out there, but it is sort of also up or down. I'm glad you brought forward all the art that we're doing now, but to remind everyone that that's because we are finally getting street station strong foundations in, right? So we're building all these buildings. The buildings have set aside within their capital dollars, but prior to that, it was sort of, for the last 10 years, it's been mostly one-off funds, right? We had a little bit of ARPA dollars. We had some of the, some carry forward dollars. And so having consistent dollars in there, which I think simply casting the net out a little bit bigger, as I look at other cities, I see they tend to look more at public spaces, parks. Those are places you really want public art, right? Buildings are good too. That it's a part of the new buildings that are going forward that beautify that space. But looking at how big of a net we're casting, seeing if we can cast it a little bit bigger. Eliminating the cap. A lot of cities don't have a cap at all. Miami does not have a cap on there. It's just 1% set aside, and that's where the art goes. But other ones do. Orlando has 500,000. St. Pete has 500,000. Tampa has 200,000. All much higher than Gainesville does. And so that would go a long way toward having us get that recurring funding and to get that through.
I was just going to say, this piece of art right here was not a commission piece. We went out just for a piece that was already done, and that was a $15,000 piece.
Okay.
So it's
that's a great piece.
Yeah.
15.
Where is it?
That is at Cherry Pool. So it actually is water, and I think it's called Spirit Flow. Spirit Flow. Yeah.
Wow. 15,000. I don't think I could go
That
to
was
the
a-
Fall Arts Festival
yeah.
and buy a piece like
No.
that for $15,000. That's that's a very.
We
good.
were excited to get that piece.
But one question I had, and so when I was first approaching this, and I think it was just looking at, we have wild spaces, public places. That is recurring funding that continues. It wouldn't, if you just took 1 or 2% of wild space public places and did that, then it wouldn't be project based. You could apply it to various areas. One of the worries I had about just making it be project based is, like we kind of saw with the GPD property and evidence building. The GPD property evidence building is along the trail, so I think it's a great place to put public art. But let's take, another building that might be like the Public Works building. We're doing a renovation on Public Works building. Does it make sense to put a large scale public art, along there? Does it make more sense to prioritize where your public art is going, saying, you'd probably say Depot Park or downtown are probably places where there's a lot of pedestrian activity, and say, that is where we have determined by our public art master plan, these are the places that we want to see public art, that we get the most bang for our buck. And those are very rarely going to be places that we're doing large buildings, right? But that's where you want them. It's great to have public art along those. I could see it along the trails in the back of Depot Park, or along, within downtown, within doing those areas. And maybe that's a different funding stream, but wild spaces could be that. Have you guys looked at that or thought about how, wild spaces or street stations might just be allocated over and doing that sort of work?
So we've had discussions about it. There is a lot of looking at the statute to see what the statute would allow, and we haven't gone to that step yet. I think Mr. Singleton is right behind me. Oh, my gosh.
Sorry to scare you, Leslie. Good afternoon, Brian Singleton, Interim Chief Operating Officer. Look, my initial review of the statute and the ordinance and how they were derived. First off, it has to be a capital cost that lasts more than 5 years. So, I'd say the majority of art would meet that threshold. The challenge is how the ordinance is written, and it specifically says costs related to parks and recreational facilities. So I'm not quite sure that passes that test, but it is something that we could definitely research more and talk to our legal department about. But my initial review, it would be a no.
Okay. Yeah, I think it is it is oddly fitting. I was reading the same ordinance. But I mean, I think it could be debatable. I mean, certainly if you were investing in park space with public art, that would be a park and recreational facility, right? The question is, could you do it in? You read the old 2009 Arts Master Plan. They talk about sidewalk art and putting things into sidewalks, putting things into medians, putting things along, right of way. I guess that would be whether that is a park and recreational facility. I guess is what is
Yes,
a little bit harder to fit in.
Can it fit in that definition? That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Singleton. Thank you, Leslie. That's all I have for now, Mr.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I kind of like this being project-based because it makes it you can see where it's tied in and how you're going to generate the funds. I think that we should tie the maintenance to the building where you're putting the art. For example, the maintenance of the art piece at GRU should be the responsibility of GRU. That should be tied in there. And perhaps that's something we should go back and revisit with them, but send that to them. I also think that the 1% cap, I would not be interested in raising it too much above that. And at this point, I don't see a dedicated visual arts coordinator either, because I think that you've got the funds in here that pretty well spells out where they're going. And once the art is purchased, if we have the maintenance occur at the site where it's located, you've kind of taken that out, and you don't need a person just to do that. But go ahead.
I would say the funding could come from those organizations, those facilities or departments, but the management of the art itself would need an art trained individuals to be able to do that. We don't just go out saying.
All right, who handles GRU now? Tell me that.
The art in there, we still are trying to. It's a little awkward right now because a lot of that art is behind a closed fence. So when we also talk about
I'm thinking of the piece right out front.
the big piece,
Yeah, the
they handle
beautiful
that.
piece right out front.
Yeah, that piece they handle, but the rest of it, there's several pieces over at the EOC on Main Street that are behind a locked gate, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for us to be able to manage and maintain those. But the ones that at Public Works, like I said, we just did that inventory where we went through all the buildings to try to find out where things are that maybe weren't cataloged before, to catalog them, to start doing those condition reports. That's all based out of Cultural Affairs.
Okay.
But they could definitely work with folks to
I think if
handle that maintenance.
If the trust spelled that out at the beginning, that this is, you get the art, this is also part of your responsibility. So, all right, that's where I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Chestnut, when you said the 1%, do you mean you don't want it to go above the 1%? Because Eastman's talking about the $100,000 cap, which is that, if you have a very, very expensive building, it's 1% or $100,000, whichever one is less.
Yeah.
Yes, whichever one is the least amount.
Yep.
And so rather than capping at 100,000 for, let's say one of the fire stations, we could just say, oh, the cap is 125,000. And then, because of that, and Leslie's, the $100,000 cap, has that been in existence
Yes.
forever?
I
And
think
so-
that's been from the very beginning.
So when we take that and look at,
Inflation.
CPI forward, I mean, literally, because we capped it at a dollar amount instead of something else, and it didn't change, we in essence, let's say, we invest half as much in a building project into the art because 100,000 doesn't buy as much more, anymore. So that's why some of the conversation is like, well, even in that, a big project, which Commissioner Eastman's right now, we have some of those street station strong foundations, so we're finally getting to that, where we're building buildings specifically with capital dollars. So, I mean, partially, we can look down that list. Can you flip back to the list of the projects in the current one? So when we go back and say, if the cap had been at 125, let's say, I don't remember the full cost, but definitely the fire stations, it'd be an extra 25,000 on each of those. I forget exactly. I don't know the percentages and how expensive the evidence building was, but right there you'd be like, oh, you'd have more of that. So I mean, I just want to make sure we're all thinking about that. There's the 1%, but the cap in different ways.
I think I have to be convinced to go beyond. I think I have to be convinced.
The 1% or the 100,000.
100, I have to be convinced.
Okay, because I could be convinced on the 100,000, making that one more, or also what type of project would qualify for this, because I mean, we're going to spend a ton at 8th and Waldo, but a lot of it's in different kind of work that's not gonna qualify for. At 8th and Waldo, only the pool building would,
I believe so.
as of right now, right? Is that about?
Yeah.
I mean,
Right, the site work is not going to qualify.
any of the site work, the pool itself, or is it just the pool building,
It is
the pool house? Would
site prep.
Fire station.
So I would say, so one of the reasons we want to rewrite the ordinance is because it's not black and white on everything. So I would say, just looking at it as it sits today, how we would apply it is that the entire aquatics facility, 1% of those costs related to the aquatic facility would, but the remainder of the site work, like the multipurpose fields, the contamination remediation, all that would not go into the calculation to calculate the transfer for art.
right, and so there's a disconnect there for me, because a lot of the art is, let's say, sculpture, and it's very frequently literally outside, and we have all these park spaces that are literally outside, as opposed to art being something that's inside a building, something that's got a nice public lobby where it makes a lot of sense, because the public circulates in and out on a decent basis. So I'm kind of open to that idea that maybe some of the larger parks, because in Depot Park we have art, right? But it wasn't funded through this, correct?
We had part of the 22 sculptures for the Gainesville 150 were there, and they have all been removed.
Okay, but like, I give Depot Park as an example, big dollar amount, but art wasn't part of it, but no one would argue that we shouldn't have art in Depot Park, like the perfect place for art.
Another component that staff has mentioned when we're talking about design of parks and these sites is, maybe selecting a fence type panel that incorporates art features instead of the set aside for art, or benches that are more artistic and aesthetically pleasing, bike racks. There's multiple ways to get more art in parks outside of this particular transfer to the trust.
There but in one way, I almost wanted to go through that, because this is how we've established art in public places. I know it comes with the funding mechanism, but maybe there's a benefit to having it go through APBT. So, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Willits. Commissioner Engel.
Yeah, just a few thoughts on it. One, that $100,000 has been there since 1989. Is that
I believe so, yes. Quite a bit.
So, doing a quick calculation on that, $100,000 in 1989 is $265,000 today. So it's less than half of what we originally decided to put into it. So I think it could make sense to make some adjustment to that. I also wouldn't mind looking at perhaps like upping that adjustment and then setting aside some part of that increase for maintenance. So let's say like if we went from 100,000 to 110,000, but that 10,000 was earmarked to go into a maintenance fund, that was something that wasn't necessarily tied directly to that project, but that could be used to upkeep art that was in public places. Because again, like unless you've got some dedicated funding source for that, it's gonna be very hard. And somebody who knows what they're doing to keep that art in good shape, I think it's gonna be tricky to kind of piecemeal maintenance of that. So I think you could make a pretty good argument that the idea of this was a much larger investment when they made it than what we're making now. And so you just from inflation, if it was break even, it'd be about 265,000. I like the idea of art being tied to the place that has kind of generated those funds, but I think there should be some option to opt out of that in places where it makes no sense. Like I said, if we're looking at a large investment in capital dollars in a place where the public just isn't going to go, having a very nice piece of art at a public works maintenance yard that no one gets to see except some public workers going out there to do maintenance in their maintenance yard. I think while our general idea should be that art should be tied to the building, I think there should be some way to opt out of that if it's a location that doesn't make sense. If it's someplace where the public's not going to enjoy it, is it really art in public places, even if technically it's a public building, but the public can't get there? Like you were just mentioning how much art we had behind locked gates at the JU buildings. Well, it's nice to know it's back there, but it's not really public. And something else that I wanted to point out on this that I really do appreciate is that there is money set aside from this that we are taking care of the artists as well as the art. Because if you want art to exist, you have to have artists. And if you want artists, they have to be able to eat. So making sure that not only are we getting art in public places, but we're putting that money into the art community and fostering that type of ability to have a career doing that, I think is very important too. So I'm fine looking at whatever different ideas come back from the kind of the advisory panel on that. But yeah, I think there's definitely some room for improvement on here, and looking forward to see what we can do with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Engel. Commissioner Buck.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Director. I think we're doing good. I'm looking here, and we have 13 projects. While we don't know some of the prices on them, I would suspect, just based on the figures that are up there, we're up at about $500,000 right on public art right now in the thing. And so that's a good thing. That does not mean, obviously, that we need more. You have to build in for inflation, costs, infrastructure, construction materials, and the artists obviously need a wage that is appropriate for the art that they're providing for. So that makes sense to me. I did have some questions. This is an area that I just don't have much expertise in at all. What state requirements are there related to public art and building?
I'm gonna refer to our chair,
If
Liana.
any.
She'll. If you don't know, Liana Caraballo, who is our chair for APPT, is also the state and public building.
And I have probably 4 or 5 questions, but if they can't be answered today, that's fine, because I know that we're gonna probably have some motions that will allow us to discuss this in the near future.
So in 1979, the state of Florida legislated an art and state buildings program. And so up to 0.5%, capped at 100,000, goes towards art in that facility. So I manage those projects for the University of Florida. Universities have their own oversight, but then someone centrally in Tallahassee would handle any other sort of state building, Department of Transportation, Health and Human Services, things of that nature. So the state does have a public art policy on the books.
So on a kind of as a rudimentary understanding, if it's a government building, there's going to be a small amount of money coming from this in that project from that government entity, like you said, 0.5%, that may may provide for some public art in our arena here, but it's a small amount and it's specific to that project, that government building.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So if our big government partners here build something, then they're going to provide some monies right there to do some things that make our city, vibrant, more welcoming. Public art does deal with safety also, so I appreciate that. On your projects, the one it's a quick question. It says Boulware Springs interpretive, and I see our different I just didn't know what that was. What does interpretive mean?
So part of the actual project for Boulware Springs Waterworks building is an interpretive panels to talk about the history of the spring, history of the building, and how it kind of helped make what Gainesville is today. So it's going to be interpretive panels. That's part of the project budget. It's not part of the 1% art. So there will also be a 1% art along with that. So.
Are there some art-like projects that occur within the things that we do, especially in Parks and Recreation, Cultural Affairs, that don't take the arts monies, but in fact they may be bricking or structure and things that still have this kind of a quasi-art appearance, and yet it's funded out of our, maybe for example, our normal general revenue fund as opposed to arts in public places?
So, sort of. I always say that beautiful cities have beautiful infrastructure. So anytime we can, like Mr. Singleton said, take an opportunity to take a bike rack and make it more artistic and more beautiful. If we can take fencing and make it more artistic and beautiful. If we can take cladding on a building, all of those things that make cities beautiful. If we can do that, we try. And we actually have standards for bike racks in our park standards, and there's one that is a little bit more artistic. I think Wilhelmina Johnson's going to get one. They're beautiful. They're a little bit more artistic. They're not a piece of art, but they have a more artistic feel or flair to them. And so those are purchased from a company. They're not purchased from an artist. But we try to do things when we look at it, if it's cost effective for us to be able to enhance that element across the board to make it
The example
more
you
beautiful.
provided was exactly what I was thinking. Bike racks, for example, have an
Yeah.
artistic element. We purchase them, but they won't come out of arts and public places. So it's additional monies that we're putting in towards making whatever structure or whatever park that we want, ways that make it look. So that's additional monies that go in, but they may not come out of this funding source.
And I wish I had a picture of it, and I don't have a picture of it, but in Coffrin Nature Park, there is an aperture that holds up a tree that was done by Leslie Tharp that is actually art. Because the tree was encroaching, this beautiful branch was encroaching on the trail, and so to get it out of people's way, they created this beautiful armed aperture to hold up that branch. And that was done with funding from, I believe, from general fund. I have to go back and double check, but I think that's where it came from. But it's beautiful. It's functional, and it served a purpose, but it was also art, and an artist made it.
Thank you for that. So, Ms. Renee, I think for every opportunity when we build infrastructure and stuff, we should look for the opportunities to make the core infrastructure costs areas that are quasi-art-like. And it sounds to me like that's exactly what you are doing, because that leverages existing monies, provides additional funding, and that's an excellent thing. So I appreciate the answers. My thoughts here are, you do have recurring maintenance and funding and ongoing monies. They're just not sufficient, I think, is what you're saying for what you're doing.
Not
right?
for art. We do not for art. We have, Parks has some recurring maintenance funding for parks, like playgrounds and that kind of thing, but not specifically for art.
Oh, good clarification. Could that be budgeted in the budget process, Mr. Manager?
Well, always, yes. I think we, but I think we need. I think we don't have a really good idea in terms of what that budget would look like in terms of what we would need for adequate maintenance, and that could be part of some of the research project.
I think that would certainly be appropriate. Any motion to mention is that's a budgeting issue, is what that is. So we need to know that annually for who's ever sitting up here. I support these recommendations here, which is, let's update these things. They're older, but we should do that by getting some really, as you said, robust engagement. We have at least a couple advisory boards and a trust that have knowledge that are probably greater than most of us. A couple of us up here that'd certainly be greater than mine. So I support these recommendations if they came in a motion. I think we're probably premature in trying to give figures and caps and stuff today. because that's what we'll get. We'll get, what do you think it should be? Should it be at least 1% with a cap of 100,000, which is how it's currently written? Or should it be something different? Should it be project-based according to the groups, or should it be something else? I lean towards project-based also, but I don't have enough expertise to really weigh in without knowing more from city staff. I think city staff and the boards can provide us some real excellent guidance on what should an update to our public places master plan be. I support that. What ordinance, looking at best practices and trends in other cities, Commissioner Eastman, you talked about that, it's critical. What are they doing? Where are we at as it relates to that? And, update our management and inventory policy. Those are things that can be done, and they're not exigent, which gives us the opportunity to do them really well. So I probably would stay away from any figures or caps or percentages until we hear back from people with expertise, including city staff and the boards, and tell us how should this look like and how can we budget it. Those are my thoughts. Thank you. This is very illuminating.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. So I have a couple comments. We'll go around for the lights that are on, and then we'll go to the public. I come back for a motion perhaps, but or we can make a motion prior to that. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I want us to be thinking about what the purpose of this is, and not how much are we going to spend. I've recently been able to visit some other cities that are similar to Gainesville, but smaller than Gainesville, without some of the resources that Gainesville has outside Florida, and been blown away by the quality of public art. I saw things in Norman, Oklahoma, of all places, that public art that moved me, that was very place appropriate for the building that it was at. For instance, a library that was also place appropriate to the community. In front of this library, there was this public art the same size as the library that was book pages in a tornado. That's a tornado alley there, as I came to learn. But it was specific to the community, it was specific to the building, and it was moving. I mean, not physically moving, but emotionally, it was a spirit lifter. That's what public art ought to do. There were a number of things in that city and another city that I visited recently that made it very clear to me that they're serious about providing art for the people who live in their community. I believe public art ought to be available for the entire community. It ought to be specific also to the people who work in the building. I want people we've got more than 1,000 people who work for the city of Gainesville, and when you come to work, I want you to walk past something or experience something that takes a little bit of the daily drudgery away, because the best job in the world still has some drudgery attached to it, right? And I want where you go to work to be a place you look forward to going to work physically. So that needs to happen. But it also ought to be something that speaks to somebody who visits our city and is memorable to them. If I can remember this thing that I drove past in Norman, Oklahoma, I want somebody to have that same experience driving through Gainesville, Florida. But beyond that, I spent about 10 years working for a PBS member station, and one of the things that made me want to work there, and one of the initial intents of the public broadcast system, was for every child in America, no matter where they lived, no matter who their parents were, no matter any of that, to be exposed to art. Because we're not all lucky enough to grow up in homes that expose a child or the whole family as they grow and age to art. Many folks take it for granted, but a lot of kids just don't get it. A lot of people in their working life aren't exposed to art. A lot of people, as they age in place, are not exposed to art. And art is something we ought to have a right to, no matter who we are, no matter what part of town you live in, no matter what you drive past every day. There ought to be something in that we all participate in that lifts your soul. And it's important that to me, that we think about that before we put dollar figures on it. And this is not a preface to asking everybody to spend a whole lot more money. That's not where I'm going. I want us, when we talk about art, I want us to be real clear what we're talking about. I'm not talking about decoration. I'm talking about something that changes your soul for the better. And we have the opportunity to do that. And I believe we have a responsibility to do that. Architecture is one of the ways we do that. Architecture is art. It ought to be, at least. When we build buildings, we are very intentional and good about not just putting a box out there. When the city of Gainesville builds something, I think, have at least made an effort for it to be something that lifts the soul. It is a piece of art in itself. That's important and it's good, but it's not complete. We talk a lot, particularly recently, I talk a lot about supporting the arts in this community. That is a thing that is a core value for the city of Gainesville, but I don't just mean performing arts. And I want us to keep all of that in mind as we move forward. I think what I'm looking for today is for us to kick off a process, not to make hard and fast decisions, but to kick off a process that leads us to a place over however long it takes where we get good information from the experts who are in our community, and Lord knows we've got arts experts in our community. And not only from experts, but from folks who are going to read this, the story of this meeting and come in and want to tell us about it. I want them to come in and tell us about it. We have often said that we believe that our community supports the arts. This is an opportunity for an expression of that. And I want to take that opportunity very seriously. I completely agree that when we build something, particularly something that is outside, an art installation that is outside, we can't just say, okay, that's great, we're done. It must have some maintenance attached to it. And either that's going to come out of the general fund through maintenance of the building over the course of years without us planning for it to, or we can put it aside in a portion of the original build in a fund that says this is how we pay for this stuff. I am hopeful that we don't just think about place-specific art, but that we do, what would you call it, plop art?
Plop art.
Yeah. I would like to see some plop art too. I mean, there are places where we ought to be, where the city has open space that begs for art. And I don't want us to miss that opportunity. I don't want to do all of it cheap. I'm kidding. I want us to make a good quality thought process on this about not only what we're trying to achieve, but also how we will fiscally achieve it. But I do not want us to build things that only work for people who already are exposed to art. I want it to be in places where everybody in our community, from their first perception until their last perception, is fed by what we do. So, all right. I'll go back around and then we'll go to the public. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. I think that the APPT and the advisory board will be motivated by our comments, because I think that we're sharing lots of ideas for them. I particularly like Commissioner Engel's idea. I'm going to call it mitigation art. And that is that if you can't put art in a particular place, then take those funds and transfer them to a place that you can. Do we have public art in any lobby?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I was trying to think of that. Very good, glad to know that. What are we putting out here on the plaza?
So one of the projects
I
that,
didn't see it have I missed it in the list of 13?
nope, it is part of the City Plaza redesign, but we're repurposing art. So we took the bricks, the rainbow bricks that went across the road. They were pulled up because they
Okay.
weren't able to be just removed. Those bricks were being reconfigured into a space inside City Hall Plaza for kind of a remembrance space for people to reflect on, a space to show our community where our priorities are. So we went, it was very thoughtful. We worked with the Pride Center,
Right, I
and a bunch of other
remember now.
stakeholders. So yeah, it will have art. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, I think that I enjoyed reading this report. So it's well done, so thank you. And I could be convinced to increase the cost or increase the donation to today's funds. I'm happy to know that we are much better, we are more committed than the state of Florida and what they put up 45 years ago. So I think that this will be an interesting experience, and that the advisory board will have lots to look at from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Mr. Manager, did you have something to add there?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, first I wanted to thank the commission for giving us the ability to come back and do some more research. I think as you all were talking, I was thinking about a project that sort of underscores some of the complexity and some of the issues that we want to work through and bring back to you. So we are currently replacing, or we're going to be replacing the HVAC system at the Thomas Center. It's, I think, according to Mr. Singleton, our budget is about $460,000, so well within the major renovation threshold that we have incurred in ordinance. So some of that funds are going to come from the building fund, which is a restricted funding source, and we can't use it for just anything and everything. The project is located at the Thomas Center, so I know we've talked about instances of areas that we don't have maybe a lot of public going. Obviously, the Thomas Center does, but the Thomas Center is blessed with a lot of public art. And so there may be instances where maybe it's to the mitigation art. Maybe we wanted to put that funds to an area that doesn't have public art. And then what's more, so it's all to say that I guess the project thresholds, like where it's applied to, some of these are great discussions, and I think they are going to be. Many of them are going to be worked on by staff. So I wanted to thank the commission for really kind of giving us the ability to come back, make some recommendations, and work through some of these complicated issues. So,
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Engel.
I was just curious if we're able to kind of prioritize or emphasize local artists when we do these, or is it just kind of thrown out to the world?
Carol, do you want to come up and talk about the short? Yes.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Carol Velasquez, Cultural Affairs Manager. The way that we approach the call to artist process, our ordinance says that we're to reach out to regional and national artists, but we do give extra bonus points if you are in the city of Gainesville, so that gives them a better opportunity to score higher during their rubric scoring.
Thank you.
You good?
Yep.
Commissioner Book.
Yeah, very briefly, I just kind of on the side, we have all kind of, artistic expressions, and you said not necessarily just the visual arts or the performance arts, but interestingly enough, over the weekend, it was the city of Gainesville with Impact GNV. I know you attended, Mr. Mayor, and our community paramedicine program that had a movie premiere right here. And so I'm going to pass that along. I just happen to pick up. But this is an example of something that may not come funding out of here, coming funding out of other sources, but is clearly along the lines of art in a very different way. It's pretty impressive that we're able to work with a professor on the West Coast merely to provide an entire movie that relates to reduction of gun violence. So I didn't want to get too far afield. I just thought we should mention it because it's appropriate to say it's within the realm of what we're talking about. Like Commissioner Chestnut said, I like building an exception, which Commissioner Engel put out there. I think you always have to have the capability for there to be something that probably doesn't fit. So, and there may be something like that, and maybe an inaccessible building or a non-public space. And something else that the manager and assuming this motion is update these things. What we want to do is, are there incentives that we can do under private enterprise to tell them, you do more, and here's what we can provide for you that may not necessarily be a dollar for dollar, but allow us to incentivize and leverage what prior, and so that other buildings, as they build things, will do more because they want to be welcoming and vibrant, and they want people to stay there and live there and work there and play there. And I think that might be just a factor to consider as something goes through the board. Someone here may want to make this motion, but I support exactly as it reads here. And this is a very, very good conversation. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Book. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Commissioner Eastman. Yeah.
I can. I mean, so I'm really excited to see all this come back. I do think that we have lots of other cities that we could look at for our, to improve our ordinance. Of course, there's different thresholds and levers, but it seems like every city has some kind of structure in there. We have to take a look at it. I would also love to see us, improve our Arts and Public Places master plan, look at voluntary development incentive program. I see that less within the state of Florida, though it may be around. I just don't see it in the reports that I have. But what I would like to see is when we're talking about the scope of the project, I mean, I would love to get back, maybe by this summer, how the Arts and Public Places Trust and our staff looks at those different levers. I don't know if that's too soon to come back by August or August, September, sometime in the summer with what the eligibility for these projects are, the caps, the thresholds, that sort of thing, and not have too much be hung up on. There's a whole lot of recommendations here, including the Arts and Public Places Master Plan, all of that. But I would really like to see the ordinance come back to us within, I don't know, the next 4 or 5 months. I don't know if that's if that's too much to. I know that that's budget cycle, and you guys have a tremendously large amount of Arts and Public Places arts going on at the moment.
In the research for the master plan that would go into going to the master plan, the recommendations that would come out would be what we could land on possibly.
Oh, so your thought is that the master planning
plan
process would feed
Yes.
into
Yep.
the capital improvement plan
Yep.
project. Okay, so
Yeah.
that wouldn't be a separate project. That would all be tied
Oh,
in,
yes,
and
all tied
whoever comes in and does that master plan, similar to I see Sarasota had something similar where they did a kind of full review of all the rest of the arts and public places. Okay. I guess I could do that. I'm just very excited about it. As you know, I've been talking to you about this for about a year now, where I'd like to see us, I'd like to see more public art. I'd like to see us having more recurring funding. What I love about this is that we have really good staff on our cultural affairs department, including Leslie, including Carol. We have Oakleana, on the Arts and Public Places Trust. We have staff that's very, very passionate about this and really wants to do it. And I kind of just want to let the leash off and go, but I understand you got to follow process. You got to go through the master plan. So I guess I could just I'll just move the staff recommendation that we authorize staff to work with the Arts Public Places Trust to update the ordinance and the Arts Public Places Trust master plan, and authorize staff to update the collections management policy.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And I will say, I'm intrigued by the development incentive for providing public art. I think that could really go somewhere. I think there's opportunity to work with that.
So then let me just add to the motion. I know this wasn't in the official motion, but yes, I'd like for us to ask staff to research options for a voluntary development incentive program and to review and update the Arts and Public Places master plan.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to say that I would like to see the master plan developed thoroughly but not rushed. I don't want to see it rushed. I think that we haven't really touched this since the 70s, and so it's going to take some time. And so I really think our comments, our discussion here should be provided to the committee. I particularly like giving preference to local artists. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. And we certainly have no dearth of local artists. We're blessed in this community to be able to say that, and it doesn't change the pool all that much. So that's great news. I would like when we are finished with this ordinance and this master plan for this to be the sort of thing that other communities can take a look at and copy. That I want us to be a leader in this. This is our opportunity to take a real leadership role, not only in Florida, but in other cities, for how we approach public art. So let's approach it from that perspective. And if that means it takes an extra quarter or two, it just does. because I want us to be able to be real proud of what we finished this with. So, all right, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, I just need the addendum that was added right at the end there.
Honestly,
The development.
moved staff recommendation, and then I think I just added in to research options for a voluntary development incentive program. So I think that was the only addition to what I
Research
see.
options for voluntary development and
Is the second one.
Oh, the second, I'm sorry, it's up there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, do you have what you need?
Yes, I have that, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
All right, we have a motion and second, and we've already asked for public comment, so all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passed unanimously with Commissioner Duncan Walker absent. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about where we're going to go with this. I appreciate it. Thanks. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we're on to 2026-268 Gainesville Fire Assessment Assistance Program with recommendation the General Policy Committee. Hear a presentation from staff on the Charitable Religious Literary Scientific Assistance Program for the Special Assessment for Fire Services for the City of Gainesville.
Welcome, Chief Hillhouse.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Sean Hillhouse, Fire Chief for the City of Gainesville. So staff was asked to bring back some information on the assistance program for the fire assessment and talk a little bit about what other locations are doing and other options that were available to the commission. So I'd like to thank Valentina Gomez, who's the administrative assistant to the fire chief, Sandra Newbarth, who is the director for the director of Accenture Infrastructure and Capital Projects for Answer Advisory, and Catherine Mockler from the City Attorney's Office, who helped us compile this information in a very timely manner. So I'd like to start with sort of where our special assessment comes from. Our ordinance is actually written under State Statute 166.021, which talks about the home rule. So that's kind of where we develop the basis for our assessment. The general rule from the Florida Supreme Court is that special assessments are valid if they specially benefit the property and are fairly apportioned. So they're not ad valorem taxes. They don't depend on taxable status. So we need a special benefit to the property, fairly apportioned. And then a fire assessment is lawful if the services provided provide a special benefit to the property, cost fairly apportioned, and then there's a uniform method for levy and collection of non-ad valorem assessments, and that comes from a different state statute, which is State Statute 197.3632. And then the assessable costs for a fire assessment have to be for fire-related only. So it can't come from the total budget of the fire department. It can only be for the portion of the budget that we utilize for specifically for fire. So our assistance program that we offer, so we assess everybody, every piece of property for the fire assessment, and then we go, okay, everybody owes a certain amount, and then the City of Gainesville, by ordinance, says we will pay a particular amount for specific entities. So assistance programs that are allowable by law, they're not required under any way, so you don't have to have an assistance program. Some very common assistance programs are hardship, usually income-based, or you can have charitable, religious, literary, or scientific exemptions. And then just to mention, there's no capability for us to compel government entities. We can bill them, but we have no way to compel them in order to be able to pay that assessment. So if we choose to have an assistance program, it has to be applied consistently. It can be a set percentage. Currently, we have specific groups that we say fall under our assistance program, and we pay it at 100%. So we pay the entire thing for everybody that falls in those categories. It can be a set amount, and it can include a multi-step verification and assessment process in order to be able to do that. So number one, we can look and go, okay, does this meet, since it's not required, the commission can set exactly what it wants. So we can say, do they meet the exemption status set by the commission? And under that exemption, since the way that our assessment is set up, it's by square footage under the roof, we can actually go, okay, what percentage of the building is used for that? So that creates, just let me mention that creates a little bit of additional work if you went with a multi-step verification process. Currently, what we use is it's actually the property appraiser's office that says they fall under this category, and therefore we provide the assistance program. If we were to move to a multi-step verification process, it would be city staff that would have to delve into the data to be able to go, okay, we're cutting this group out of that because it meets the property appraiser's definition. So if we chose to do that, it would lead to increased workload on the staff in the communications office, the fire department's office, the procurement office to be able to do that. And since it requires us to make a decision versus the property appraisers, it could lead to additional errors since there's more people that would look at that. Some comparable examples that we looked at. I wanted to give you the definition that we used for our comparables. So we started with the total number of people in the area. So we looked at locations that had 140,000 to 330,000 people that were in the area. It included a major university, had a mix of urban core, suburban, and student housing, had moderate density with seasonal swings, and it had a diverse call volume that was EMS heavy, included responses to student housing and institutional facilities. So that's kind of how we determined what our comparable locations were. And then based off of those, you can see who has a fire assessment and who provides an assistant program for charitable, religious, literary, and scientific, and then who provides a hardship assistance. We both looked at what was publicly available, and we kind of reached out to these locations to get additional information. I will tell you that based off of this, for Tallahassee's hybrid model, we did find out that they do offer a religious exemption on top of this after we had produced the slide. And then,
you say Tallahassee?
Tallahassee, yes, sir. And then for Port St. Lucie that we have listed as a yes for a fire assessment, they actually do a non-valorum assessment. So fire is included in that, but it is not a straight fire assessment. If that makes sense, okay. So you can see Gainesville provides both the CRLS assistance and hardship assistance, and Alachua County, which we included based off of their proximity to us, they include a hardship assistance.
I'll pause you there for a question. Commissioner Engel. Or did you want to?
What is a hybrid fire assessment? Is that what you were talking about? Was an assessment that covered more than one thing, or what was that?
Yeah, mainly has to do with the collection method. So for
Okay.
example, Tallahassee collects through their utility bill.
Okay.
So, and then they may define it slightly differently as to how they collect that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Engel. Go ahead.
So our assistance program, just to kind of talk about the numbers, are government exemptions. So the entities that we cannot compel to pay, that works out to be about $2 million per year. For our CRLS assistance, that's just a little over $500,000 a year. Our hardship assistance is just at $2,000 a year. So that's kind of the money that we're talking about. Currently, for our CRLS and our hardship, we pay 100% for everybody that meets those definitions. So one of the things that we looked at was other things the commission could do if you so chose to do that. We looked at a flat rate exemption versus a percentage of the total amount. That was because what we heard from the commission was that you wanted to help smaller entities versus larger entities. And if we assigned a percentage, it still gave a larger benefit to bigger entities. So we looked at the information through the flat rate exemption. what you can see on this slide where it says, for exempt Cs for our charities, if it says exempt, that's people that flat rate amount would cover the entire amount of what they would owe. And then if they were still paying, they would pay something in addition to the flat rate amount. So you can kind of see how that goes through and changes over time. On the flat rate, roughly 1,500 is the breakover point where you really stop getting a large swing throughout those entities. And specifically, the median for what we're currently paying on behalf of other people, the median assistance is $1,191. The mean assistance is $2,242. So the mean being larger because there's a small number of entities that get a larger amount. One of the questions that we were asked is what happens for non-payment? So because we use the tax bill collection method, it is billed at the same time as everybody's taxes, and it has to be paid at one time for everybody's taxes. So the tax collector can issue a tax certificate against the property if the total bill is not paid. So staff's recommendation, the only thing that we ask is that we update our ordinance so that it includes the scientific and literary that falls under changes that went forth with the state. That's so that we're not trying to delve into metadata to pull anything out from the property appraiser's office. And what we expect is that it will not cause locally, it will not cause a change in the amount that's very different one way or the other. So that's the only staff recommendation we made, and I can answer any questions from the commission if you have any other questions or anything that you'd like to explore.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. You may have explained this when I stepped out. Now, who falls under what is the charitable, religious, literary, and scientific?
So
Assistance. You may have
examples.
said it.
So examples of each one of those categories. For our charitable categories, we're looking at nonprofit administrative offices, thrift stores, food banks, homeless shelters, nonprofit-owned affordable housing.
Okay.
Under religious, churches, sanctuaries, mosques, synagogues, fellowship halls, religious educational facilities, ministry offices, faith-based outreach centers. Scientific would be example of hospitals, nonprofit medical clinics, outpatient healthcare facilities, research labs, medical offices if they're owned by nonprofits, and behavioral health facilities. And our literary, it's going to be nonprofit schools, non-charter schools if they're owned by a nonprofit, libraries, educational support facilities, and student dormitories.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does Tallahassee Memorial Hospital or healthcare, do we know, do they pay fire assessment? Because they are sort of a charity sometimes, how does that fit into, or are they, I don't know.
I'll defer to Ms. Newgarth for that question.
Just as an
Well,
example.
wasn't TMH owned by Tallahassee at one point, and or they just changed ownership to FSU, which would mean they'd fall under the government?
And then, so I was trying to understand the original, because I know they also have a large nonprofit.
Well, now
arm.
Tallahassee does charge government, and they send them a bill. Whether they pay or not is another story.
we
But
know
they
that-
do. They did a lot because of the utility bill. When they first got this in place years back, they gave them a discounted rate on their utility in agreement that they would pay the fire assessment, and that's been over the years. I was not involved in it when it first got started, but I've heard the stories of it. So, but yeah, so they do charge government. The only one they don't charge is the churches.
Well, that's a great bit of local Florida knowledge we wouldn't have gotten
I
from
live
other
in
people. I was going to say, that's, just see how the sausage is made in different places, and so that I just kind of had a question about that. So I didn't realize we were a bit of the outlier, at least this chunk of cities. I didn't realize we were the outlier. That kind of changes my mind a little bit. I know that my concern was what we look at in like kind of the long term, not necessarily this year, but particularly what the legislature does with property tax. If you get into a position where, and I want to compare this to the past couple budget years, because we've all been in this, and Commissioner Engel, you'll remember as well. When we looked at our budget, one of the things that came up as a potential way to balance multiple years was cutting aid to outside agencies. And that, you've talked to some of them, Early Learning Coalition, Grace Marketplace, a whole list of things. But never in that list did we actually say, oh, and the $500,000 of this. When it was proposed by the previous mayor, just as theoretical options, in kind of a doomsday scenario, this was never included in that. And so I think when we're going forward, I'm very interested. Thank you for helping us bring this forward. I know we had a sunshine meeting, and I think it may have been in the sunshine meeting where just Engel, Eastman, and Willett said, we're interested in the size of the organization. Maybe there is a cap where it's like anything over, $1,000. That's where you have to pay. But everyone gets $1,000 break for the smaller. I don't know that the commission told you that. I think it was the three of us, maybe. Just for clarity.
Thank you for the clarification.
I think if I remember right.
That's correct.
But just for the long term, because even if we didn't change anything, the dollar amount, whatever, I would prefer we write them a physical. In my preference, we write these organizations a physical check every year, and they know that they're getting a subsidy from the city. They know that Fort Myers doesn't do this, and Lakeland, and Ocala, and Port St. Lucie, and Alachua, just to be clear, Alachua County doesn't either. Because I know we don't get credit for having subsidized the religious and nonprofit institutions in our community to the tune of $500,000 a year. Absolutely not. It is not. That is not being acknowledged. I don't think the community understands that. So I don't have a lot of opinion about doing something absolutely right now, but looking at this particularly if the legislature and then the voters say, you don't have access to property tax, $500,000 is real money. I think $100,000 is real money, but it is. So, but thank you, Chief, for hearing some of us and bringing some of that data. I have a question real quick, just because it's topical for the clerk. Would your staff have been able to, whip this up as research, legislative policy research? Because this is, I want to use this as an example where we kind of had to enlist, the fire GFR to do what maybe in a different situation we used to have the ability to do within the clerk's office.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. Certainly the calling around to all of the different cities was typical of what the policy research program did, and that, current staffing levels kind of prevent us from sort of doing those blast out, calls and understanding a statewide trend.
Right, and obviously GFR, they're the experts. They know that's start with them because they've known this for years, and so I'm not saying we would have taken it to someone else to do the research. They would have gone immediately to you and said, hey, let's get this information to the commission. But thank you, Chief, and thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Willetts, Commissioner Book.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief. So can you remind me, you provided some examples of definitions. I clearly know what, a church or religious or charitable organization. Well, give me a couple examples of what literary and scientific were. I know we're going to match those to basically what the state is requiring.
So some common examples for literary would be nonprofit schools, charter schools if they are owned by a nonprofit, libraries, educational support facilities, student dormitories if it's tied to one of those nonprofit school missions. And then scientific would be hospitals, nonprofit medical clinics, outpatient healthcare facilities, research laboratories, medical offices if nonprofit owned, and behavioral health facilities.
And those designations are actually provided by the tax appraiser, so we don't have to do work to figure out that somebody fits within those categories. Like, I'm mindful of staff and of time for that.
Yes, sir, and that's why the staff recommendation was for us to update our
Match the
ordinance
state.
to match the state.
Right.
Previously, we did match the state. They changed their definitions a little bit, so we're asking to continue to match the state, so it doesn't require that additional dive into that data. It
Assuming
doesn't
that,
require us to make a judgment call.
Okay, assuming that a motion goes forward that says basically match the state, bring us in compliance there. You alluded to this. What's the potential fiscal impact? Do we know that yet?
So our estimates for the coming years, $524,000 total. $511,000 was our previous year. So it's roughly flat.
So, okay, so the 511,000 is what we know now. If we extended and matched this state designation, you're talking about another $10,000 of what we estimate would be potentially fiscal impact if those were in that ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Our consultant has given us a different answer.
And it actually might be a little bit less than that, because we were looking at a couple of different scenarios as to what the commission may do. So that's a higher end estimate.
Yeah, I was thinking if we have, for example, a for-profit hospital that's a gigantic footprint that, may pay currently, and they don't, that might have greater impact, but I guess you all have done that analysis.
They are currently not paying.
And that's why the impact is.
That's why the impact is very
Is
flat.
expected to be small if
Yes,
it
sir.
went forward.
I'm not sure what the emphasis was for the state to change, but it would cause very little impact for us locally.
All right, thank you. My last question is, so we are currently billing government entities. We're just probably not getting any of those paying because there's not an enforcement mechanism there. Are we billing other government entities in the city of Gainesville?
I don't believe that we are.
All right, so our estimate is, if we were to bill them and they were to pay, which they don't have to do, that's where the $2 million comes from.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Book. Commissioner Engel?
So, just so I can understand that, currently if we expanded that, the list by the staff recommendation, we're not really adding anybody that's not already on the list. We're just making the list, making the language current, right? We're not expecting to add more exemptions because of the change of that. Is that correct?
It would be minimal, if at all.
Okay. Second, it would also be very difficult for us to split any of those categories out. Is that correct? So if we said, we're good doing religious, but I don't want to do scientific or literary, that would have to move it in-house because the property appraiser's not doing that, is how I understood it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I feel like it's kind of an all or nothing on that then, unless we want to bring it all in-house. This is something I really do want to take a look at. I want to make sure that if we do make any changes to this, aside from, I'm very comfortable with changing the definition. If we do make any changes to this, that we're giving our nonprofit communities in town and the rest of them enough heads up that they can really adjust that. So again, I'm not particularly interested in moving forward with major changes to that this year. But I really do appreciate the speed and B, the information we got back just on that. We are kind of the outlier in this, that a lot of places don't have those type of exemptions for fire. But I'm very comfortable with staff recommendation on this.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Engel. I have a couple thoughts, and I'll move around again, and then we ask for a public comment. I'm not interested in making changes, other than to get right with state's language. I do want us to start making sure that the parts of the community who are getting a break on this, who we are providing assistance for, are fully aware that they're getting assistance on this. And I would like us to make the larger community aware of that as well. I think it's important that we say, here's what we would be charging you, whatever the entity is. Here's your letter every year that says this is what we would be charging you if we were not providing you this, this extra support. And then we should quantify that for the rest of the community and make sure the community is aware of that. It is not a constitutionally driven support for what you do. It is something we have chosen to do, and we're the only community in Florida doing it that way. And I want our community to be aware that this is a $500,000 a year that we have chosen to support the nonprofit community with. I think that's an important thing that the community is completely unaware of. So at the very least, I would like us to start making folks aware of that. We are not charging for this at this point. And every other community is.
And Mr. Mayor, the individuals would see it on their trim notice, so they would see that they're being assessed, but then it would not be on their tax bill.
Right. I would prefer to, and I know that is a little extra expense, but I would prefer to go to that extra expense and say, hey, just wanted you to be aware that we are subsidizing you. The community is subsidizing you, and we're happy to do it, but be aware. And then let the larger community understand that all 151,000 of us are subsidizing the nonprofit community. If we're going to spend $500,000, we ought to get credit for spending $500,000. Commissioner Willis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the categories, the adding, which I supported, kind of cleans up. Is it mostly just for people's understanding because both of those categories still have to be owned by nonprofits, I assume 501c3s. It's that charitable isn't very clear because we say charity, but tax law is much more interesting.
Our request to update it and add those two things is because that's the way that it's sorted by the property appraiser, and
Right.
they go off of the state's definition. Currently, our ordinance only mentions charitable and religious.
Got it.
So we just simply wanted to be in line with the information that we're getting, so it wouldn't be contestable.
Okay. So on this vein, I now want to know what counts as a charity, and I know that you're not a tax lawyer, right? Does IBEW, which is a 501c9 or something?
No.
No, they do not pay the fire assessment.
No, we do not get the exemption.
You don't get the exemption. So as an example, charitable is not well defined except with a bunch of numbers in the tax code. In my opinion, I'll say. So that's interesting. And then I'll just leave with, Mr. Mayor, I agree. Like letting people know that this is something we have done for years. And it's funny because when Florida Doge had their opinion about our budget, they didn't identify this as potential waste, fraud, or abuse. They didn't say, you've been unnecessarily favoring your religious institutions. You've been unnecessarily favoring. You've been given a deal to all these nonprofits that are flocking to your city. I mean, I don't think nonprofits are flocking to our city.
We have a high proportion of nonprofits in this town. Yeah.
I probably no more than Tallahassee, particularly probably no more than Tallahassee. We're probably pretty similar. But we also don't have any like monster. I remember this conversation in our Sunshine Meeting. We don't have any like huge nonprofits outside of whatever UF Health Shands is. But we don't have like the national headquarters of some huge, multi-million-dollar property nonprofit, right? I mean, we don't have. I'm trying to think of an example.
Not that I'm aware of.
Right. So we don't have some nonprofit that they've got their international headquarters here and they've got tens of millions of dollars of property. So it's not like there's one thing we could just get a lot of money. This is outside of one big chunk, which is, I think if you remember right, roughly $50,000 is not collected from UF Health Shands under this exemption or this assistance program. All right, so we are assisting UF Health to the tune of $50,000 a year. I'm going to take this as an opportunity. But when I met with them, they couldn't find the money to have a full-time trauma counselor for gun violence victims. They asked us to fund it. They asked me, well, why don't y'all whip it up in your budget? They pay us $50,000 in fire assessment. I know it's not the same pot, but maybe we could help with a full-time trauma-informed counselor to go help gun violence victims and their families. Anyways, I just wanted to throw that in there. There's a tie in there somewhere.
Yes.
Somewhere, right?
Enlighten them.
Yes.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner Wells. Commissioner Book.
I've spoken once already, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if you want to go to the public. I don't think we probably have. Okay. Well, the information's good, and I think Commissioner Engel, you kind of started this off by saying, let's see what the impacts are and what this does. I think what we've probably found out is our faith-based and our religious and nonprofit organizations, they give back the money several times fold. And the figure is fairly low. It's lower than what I thought it would be. I don't know what you are. I was expecting that the CRLS assistance was going to be something much higher than $500,000. And I think the monies that we end up giving to these organizations, whether it's as individuals or as a government entity, probably come back. Each dollar that goes into a nonprofit, if they're doing their job, is coming back 5 and 6 and 7 times to us. And if we were even to add something like that, Commissioner Engeltine, very difficult to differentiate between those. And ultimately, that would just mean they would do probably less. It'd be less dollar for dollar. So it's good to know. I do what the Mayor Pro Tem said was, and the Mayor, about notifying organizations. They are getting money from the city and probably don't even realize it. It's an excellent idea. Commissioner, you started this. I didn't know if you wanted to make the motion, but if you did, it would also be probably to include notifying organizations annually. It's a small figure to tell them they are getting a large benefit from the city that allows them to do more. That's my thoughts, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Book. Do we have any public comment, Madam Clerk?
There's no public comment, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Engel or anyone else, would you like to make a motion of any sort?
Yeah, I'll move that recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Book.
I would just say, would you like to add that the city notify organizations annually of the impact, the ones that are getting this?
Sure.
That's fine.
You good? No problem. All right. Anyone else? I see no further lights. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously with Commissioner Deckenwalker out. Commissioner Engel. Thank you, Chief Hillhouse. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I just like to say with the way we do this, many of these organizations do wonderful work in town, and I don't know how we get past without them. Some of them don't. And we don't make a decision of how it is we assist these organizations based on the good works they do or anything else. We decide how much assistance to give them based on the size of their roof, and that's it. And as I think moving forward, there's probably a better way to do that. But again, I think we're going to have to give them far too much notice for worrying about it in this budget year. And I really do appreciate this information. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Engel. Thanks, everybody, for your time and attention on this. Thanks for the work that went into it. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we're under member comment.
Commissioner Engel.
So, for those of you that are kind of big on the Gainesville music scene, today marks the 15th anniversary of one of our most prominent musicians, known kind of stage name as Mama Trish, actually getting married. And I think that marks an important milestone in Gainesville music history that I am going to go out and personally celebrate this evening.
Excellent. All right. Please pass our best on to Mama Trish. And to you as well.
Send my regrets for being married to you to Mama Trish. But congratulations for being married.
All right. Any other member comment? All right. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned.